Stop right there. Hands where I can see them.
Whoa, what's the problem? I'm just walking.
Keep your hands up, turn around.
Seriously, officer, what's going on?
We got a report of a car theft suspect matching your description.
You got the wrong guy. I'm just on my way home.
Stay where you are, keep your hands visible.
Look, I didn't want to make a scene, but...
Anyone can buy a badge online, turn around, put your hands behind your back.
Officer Blake Morrison had been with the Phoenix Police Department for 6 years when he made the kind of mistake that doesn't just end a career, it destroys everything you've worked for. He was 29 years old, confident in his abilities, and convinced he was good at spotting criminals. One Saturday afternoon in a busy shopping center parking lot, he saw a black man walking to his car and decided, without any real evidence, that he matched the description of a car theft suspect. The man he stopped was Special Agent David Harris, a 14-year FBI veteran with an impeccable record. What Morrison did next, ignoring Harris's credentials, refusing to verify his identity, and arresting him in front of dozens of witnesses would cost the city $3.7 million and prove that sometimes bias is stronger than a federal badge. Before we continue, where are you watching from? If this is your first time here, please hit that subscribe button. Stories like these need to be shared, and your support helps us bring more truth to light. Desert Ridge Marketplace sits in North Phoenix, a sprawling outdoor shopping center with high-end retail stores, restaurants, and a movie theater. On weekends, the parking lots are packed with families, couples, teenagers hanging out. It's the kind of place where nothing dramatic ever happens. It was 2:30 on a Saturday afternoon in October. The Arizona sun was bright and hot, temperature hovering around 94 degrees, the kind of heat that makes you hurry from air-conditioned store to air-conditioned car. Special Agent David Harris had been with the FBI for 14 years. 14 years working complex cases that most people never hear about. 8 years in the Organized Crime Division investigating drug trafficking organizations, human smuggling operations, and interstate criminal enterprises. 4 years in white-collar crime, dismantling financial fraud schemes. 2 years in violent crimes before that. He'd coordinated with DEA, ATF, ICE, and local police departments across the Southwest. He testified in federal court more than 20 times. He'd received commendations from 2 different FBI directors. His supervisors called him thorough and reliable. His colleagues called him the guy who never missed a detail. At 39 years old, David Harris was exactly where he'd worked, to be trusted with major investigations, respected by everyone who knew his work, and valued as someone who could handle the pressure that came with going after dangerous criminal organizations. That Saturday afternoon, Harris wasn't working a case. He was off duty, dressed in jeans, a polo shirt, and casual sneakers. He'd gone to Desert Ridge to buy a birthday gift for his daughter. She was turning 12 next week and had just walked out of a sporting goods store carrying a shopping bag with a new soccer ball and cleats. His personal vehicle, a dark blue Honda Accord, was parked in the middle of the lot about 50 yards from the store entrance. He'd grabbed his keys from his pocket and was walking toward his car, thinking about his daughter's birthday party, when everything changed. He had every right to be there. He'd broken no laws. He was just a father shopping for his kid. But to Officer Blake Morrison, cruising through the parking lot in his patrol car, Harris looked like something else entirely. Blake Morrison had joined the Phoenix Police Department 6 years earlier, with dreams of becoming a detective. He wanted to solve major cases, make big arrests, build a reputation as someone who could spot criminals that other officers missed. But Morrison had a problem. He saw criminals everywhere, especially criminals who fit a very specific profile. In 6 years, Morrison had generated 14 complaints. 14. That number should have triggered intensive review, reassignment, or termination. But each complaint had been investigated and closed with recommendations for additional training. Morrison attended every workshop, signed every form, and went right back to the same behavior. 10 of the 14 complaints involved stops of black men in situations where there was minimal or no probable cause. A black teenager walking through a parking lot, Morrison detained him for 30 minutes, claiming he matched a robbery suspect. He didn't. A black businessman leaving a bank, Morrison questioned whether he had permission to be there and demanded to see his withdrawal receipt. A black jogger in a residential neighborhood, Morrison followed him for 3 blocks before pulling him over to verify he lived in the area. The pattern was clear. Morrison profiled, he made assumptions, and he escalated situations unnecessarily. His supervisors had noted in evaluations that he was proactive but sometimes overzealous, and that He should work on distinguishing between suspicious behavior and normal activity. But those notes never translated into consequences. Morrison remained on patrol, armed with authority and apparently incapable of recognizing his own bias. That afternoon, Morrison was cruising through Desert Ridge, scanning the crowds, looking for anything that might be worth investigating. That's when he saw David Harris, a black man, walking through a parking lot, alone, carrying a bag, moving with purpose toward a car. Morrison's mind filled in the rest. Recent uptick in car thefts in the area. This guy fit the profile, walking quickly, like he didn't want to be noticed. Had to be up to something. None of it was true. But Morrison believed it anyway. He made a U-turn, drove up behind Harris's parked Honda, and stepped out of his patrol car. Do you think officers should face discipline for stops based on racial profiling before they escalate to arrests? Drop your answer below. Harris heard the car pull up behind him and turned. He saw the police cruiser, the officer stepping out, hand near his belt. Harris's stomach sank. He'd been through this before. Not often, but enough times to recognize the look, the assumption, the suspicion that had nothing to do with behavior and everything to do with skin color. Stop right there, hands where I can see them. Harris stopped, confused. Whoa, what's the problem? I'm just walking. Keep your hands up, turn around. Harris raised his hand slightly. Seriously, officer, what's going on? Morrison stepped closer, his posture aggressive. We got a report of a car theft suspect matching your description. Keep your hands where I can see them. Harris felt the familiar mixture of frustration and disbelief. You got the wrong guy. I'm off duty. Look, FBI Special Agent Harris. Harris carefully moved his hand toward his back pocket where he kept his credentials when he was off duty. The black leather case with his badge and ID card. Morrison's hand moved to his weapon. Don't reach. I'm reaching for my credentials, my badge. I'm FBI. Keep your hands where I can see them. Harris stopped, his hand halfway to his pocket. Officer, I'm a federal agent. My credentials are in my back pocket. I'm going to slowly pull them out so you can verify who I am. I said don't move, then how do I show you my badge? This is where the psychology of the stop reveals itself. Officer Morrison had already decided what he was looking at. In his mind, he'd spotted a car thief, someone trying to talk his way out of trouble. And the claim of being FBI? Classic deflection. Criminals posed as law enforcement all the time. Morrison had heard about it in training. So when Harris said he was FBI, Morrison didn't hear truth. He heard a lie. A sophisticated lie, but a lie nonetheless. Anyone can buy a badge online. Turn around and put your hands behind your back. Harris stared at him in disbelief. This is a real federal badge. Call it in. Verify it. Don't make this worse. I'll decide what gets verified. You're under arrest. Harris closed his eyes briefly, taking a slow breath. He knew what was about to happen. He could refuse and risk escalation, or he could comply and let this catastrophic mistake play out. Officer Morrison. Harris read the nameplate, his voice dropping to something cold and controlled. I am Special Agent David Harris, FBI. I work out of the Phoenix field office. I've been with the Bureau for 14 years. I came here to buy a birthday present for my daughter, and you are about to arrest me based on nothing but racial profiling. Morrison pulled out his handcuffs. Turn around. If you handcuff me, you're going to be on the news tomorrow. You're going to be named in a federal lawsuit. And you're going to lose your job. Last warning, turn around. Harris turned slowly. I'm complying under protest. But everyone watching needs to know I'm FBI. This is wrongful arrest. And this officer refused to verify my credentials. People had stopped to watch. Phones came out, someone started recording, a woman called out. Is that really necessary? Morrison ignored them all. He pulled Harris's arms behind his back and snapped the handcuffs on. Tight. Should officers be required to verify law enforcement credentials before making arrests? Let me know what you think. Harris stood in the parking lot, handcuffed, his shopping bag on the ground next to his car, his keys confiscated. Dozens of people were watching. Several were recording. Officer, Harris said, his voice steady but loud enough for the crowd to hear. My FBI credentials are in my back right pocket. Pull them out. Look at them. Verify them. You have about 30 seconds before this becomes a national news story. Morrison reached into Harris's pocket and pulled out the black leather case. He opened it, Inside was a gold FBI badge and an identification card with Harris's photo, the FBI seal, his title Special Agent, and his badge number. Morrison stared at it. For a long moment, he said nothing. The badge looked real, the ID looked legitimate, the photo matched. Everything about it screamed authentic. But Morrison had committed. He'd handcuffed this man in front of witnesses. He'd made an arrest, and admitting he was wrong, admitting he'd arrested an FBI agent based on nothing but assumptions, was harder than doubling down. This could be counterfeit, Morrison said, his voice less certain now. Harris let out a sharp breath. It's not counterfeit. Call the FBI. Call your supervisor. Call anyone. But verify before you dig this hole any deeper. A second patrol car pulled up. Officer Jennifer Reyes stepped out, a 9-year veteran who'd worked with Morrison before and had learned not to trust his judgment. Blake, what's going on? Got a car theft suspect. Claims to be FBI. Reyes walked over and looked at the credentials still in Morrison's hand. She examined them carefully. Her eyes widened. Blake, these are real. How do you know? I've seen FBI credentials before. I worked with their task force for 6 months. This is legitimate. She looked at Harris, still handcuffed. Sir, are you actually a federal agent? Yes, Harris said, his voice tight. Special Agent David Harris, Organized Crime Division, Phoenix Field Office. My badge number is on that ID card. You can verify with one phone call. Reyes turned to Morrison, her voice dropping to an urgent whisper. Blake, uncuff him right now. You just arrested a federal agent. The call said, I don't care what the call said. Did you verify before you cuffed him? Morrison didn't answer. Blake, did you verify? I was in the process. That's a no. Uncuff him. Now. Morrison hesitated. The crowd was getting larger. More phones recording. He could hear people murmuring. This was not going the way he'd expected. Reyes didn't wait for him to decide. She stepped forward. Agent Harris, I'm Officer Reyes. I'm going to remove the handcuffs. I apologize for this. Appreciate it, Harris said quietly. Reyes unlocked the cuffs. Harris rubbed his wrist. Red marks visible where the metal had been too tight. He picked up his shopping bag from the ground and turned to face Morrison. Officer Morrison, I want your badge number, your supervisor's name, and the incident number for this stop. I'll be filing a formal complaint with your department and a lawsuit against you personally. Morrison's face had gone pale. I was responding to a call. You were profiling. There's a difference. I was walking to my car with a shopping bag. That's not probable cause. That's not reasonable suspicion. That's bias. A supervisor arrived within minutes. Sergeant Angela Torres, a 17-year veteran who'd seen plenty of officer mistakes, but nothing quite this bad. Someone explained what happened. Reyes briefed her quickly, her voice tense. Torres listened, her expression darkening with each detail. Then she turned to Harris. Agent Harris, on behalf of the Phoenix Police Department, I apologize. This should never have happened. Harris nodded but didn't speak. His focus was on Morrison, who was beginning to understand the full weight of what he'd done. Torres turned to Morrison. Give me your badge and weapon. You're on administrative leave, effective immediately. Sarge, I thought. You thought wrong. You arrested a federal agent based on nothing. Badge, weapon. Now. Morrison handed them over, his hand shaking. Why do some officers refuse to verify credentials even when they're presented directly? Comment your thoughts. Within 2 hours, the videos had gone viral. Multiple angles from different witnesses, all showing the same thing. A black man in a parking lot being arrested by a police officer who refused to believe he was FBI, even after seeing his badge. Phoenix cop arrests FBI agent in shopping center parking lot. Federal agent handcuffed after showing credentials to police officer. $3.7 million lawsuit filed after wrongful arrest of FBI agent. The story dominated local news by evening and national news by the next morning. The FBI issued a formal statement condemning the arrest and demanding a full investigation. The video showed everything. Morrison's aggressive approach, Harris identifying himself as FBI, Harris showing his credentials, Morrison calling them fake and arresting him anyway. Civil rights attorneys contacted Harris within hours. This wasn't just about an unlawful arrest. This was about the systematic assumption that black people are criminals until proven otherwise. It was about an officer who generated 14 complaints in 6 years and was still on patrol. It was about a department that failed to stop him before he arrested a federal agent. The lawsuit named Officer Blake Morrison, Sergeant Torres for supervisory failure, and the Phoenix Police Department. The allegations were extensive: unlawful arrest without probable cause, false imprisonment, violation of federal civil rights, racial profiling and discrimination, failure to verify credentials despite multiple requests, intentional infliction of emotional distress, failure to train and supervise officers with documented patterns of profiling. The city's attorneys reviewed the case and reached a swift conclusion: indefensible. The body camera footage and civilian videos showed everything. Morrison had no probable cause. Harris had identified himself repeatedly. Morrison had refused to verify even after seeing the badge. The city settled within 8 months, $3.7 million, paid to Special Agent David Harris. Officer Blake Morrison was terminated 10 weeks after the incident. The termination letter was final. Officer Morrison arrested a federal agent without probable cause, refused to verify legitimate credentials, and demonstrated a pattern of racially based stops that violate department policy and constitutional protections. Despite 14 prior complaints and multiple training interventions, Officer Morrison continued to engage in discriminatory policing. His employment is terminated immediately. Morrison's name was entered into the National Decertification Index. He would never work in law enforcement again. He issued a brief statement through an attorney. "I made an error in judgment during what I believe was a legitimate investigation. I apologize to Agent Harris and accept responsibility for my actions." But the apology came too late and meant too little. Should officers with 10 or more complaints be automatically removed from patrol duty? Drop your answer. The Phoenix Police Department faced intense scrutiny. How had Morrison, with 14 complaints over 6 years, remained on patrol? Why hadn't supervisors recognized the clear pattern of racial profiling? What training existed to prevent officers from arresting people based solely on appearance? Internal Affairs conducted a comprehensive review. What they found was a system-wide failure. Complaints were logged but not analyzed for patterns across officers. Training requirements were completed, but effectiveness was never assessed. Supervisors were pressured to clear officers quickly due to staffing shortages. No mechanism existed to remove officers with repeated profiling complaints from street patrol. The Department of Justice opened a pattern and practice investigation. Their findings confirmed what everyone already knew: the department had failed at every level. Reforms were announced 9 months later. Mandatory credential verification before any arrest of individuals claiming law enforcement status. Immediate desk duty for any officer with 5 or more complaints related to racial profiling. Real-time body camera review for all arrests. Quarterly analysis of officer stops, flagging racial disparities. Community Oversight Board with subpoena power. Extended probationary periods with mandatory bias assessments. Special Agent David Harris testified at city council hearings. His testimony was measured but powerful. "I'm an FBI agent. I have federal credentials. I identified myself repeatedly. I showed my badge. And Officer Morrison still arrested me. Not because I was acting suspicious. Not because I was breaking any law, but because I'm a black man in a parking lot, and in his mind, that was enough." He paused, looking around the room. "I had every advantage. Federal authority, a badge, the ability to fight back legally. But what about the black men who don't have those things? What about the people who get profiled, arrested, and don't have the resources to sue? This isn't just about one officer. This is about a system that let him profile people 14 times and did nothing to stop him." The room was silent. "If we don't fix that system, then my lawsuit means nothing. The $3.7 million means nothing. Because there's another Officer Morrison out there right now, pulling over another black person, making the same assumptions, causing the same harm. Should racial profiling complaints trigger automatic federal review? Let me know in the comments." This wasn't just a wrongful arrest. This was proof that for some officers, no credential is enough when bias has already made the decision. David Harris showed his FBI badge. He identified himself verbally, repeatedly. He asked Morrison to verify. He did everything right. And it didn't matter, because Officer Morrison saw a black man in a parking lot and decided he must be a criminal. The badge had to be fake. The claim had to be a lie. The calm demeanor had to be manipulation. His bias was so complete that it overrode physical evidence held in his hands. This is how systemic racism operates when backed by authority. It's not always violent or dramatic. Sometimes it's quiet, insidious, built on assumptions that seem reasonable until examined. It's the assumption that black people don't belong in certain spaces. It's the refusal to verify evidence that contradicts preconceptions. It's the weaponization of police power to enforce invisible boundaries about who gets to exist without suspicion. And when that bias is empowered by a badge, a gun, and the authority of the state, it doesn't just harm individuals. It erodes trust, damages communities, and perpetuates a system where some people are presumed criminal until proven otherwise. Blake Morrison's career is over. That's justice. The city paid $3.7 million. That's accountability. But money and terminations don't undo trauma. They don't restore the dignity of shopping for your daughter without being treated like a criminal. They don't erase the memory of being handcuffed in a parking lot while strangers record your humiliation. The real question is, what changes now? Do departments finally remove officers after 5 complaints instead of 14? Do they finally teach that verification comes before arrest? Do they finally accept that profiling isn't law enforcement, it's discrimination with a badge? Because if we don't fix the system that kept Blake Morrison on patrol for 6 years despite 14 complaints, if we don't address the culture that taught him black people are suspicious by default, then we're just waiting for the next officer, the next victim, the next settlement. Comment if you believe this should be federal law. Any officer who arrests someone after refusing to verify law enforcement credentials loses certification permanently. No exceptions. And if you think these stories matter, if you believe accountability requires awareness and change requires pressure, then hit that subscribe button, because we're not stopping. We're going to keep exposing these patterns. We're going to keep demanding better. We're going to keep fighting for the FBI agents, the shoppers, the ordinary people who deserve to exist without being presumed criminal. This isn't just about one officer or one agent. It's about all of us and the world we're willing to accept.